Okay, welcome to lesson 2 from module 2, the Ooda Loop. This is more for the military mindset people out there because this is taken from the military. I used it in the military. So here we go. I learned the Ooda Loop in the Navy, as I said. It's traditionally a military strategy. And in the military, this strategy would get brought into my world as a tool to overcome a dynamic situation and as an approach to decision making. Since I did my emergency medicine residency in the Navy, where I basically learned how to become an emergency physician over the course of 4 years, I found a way to apply it in the ER, which is a dynamic, changing state where a lot of decisions need to be made. When I'd be taking care of like a complex patient, taking in all these inputs, it was a great framework to do all that, and I still do it to this day. But once I learned RAIN, I realized that it was a very similar tactic and technique. So I figured, well, why not take Ooda, which I've always known since I've been in the military, and I could share it with other people and apply it to my own stress relief. So in this lesson, we're going to go through what Ooda Loop is, which is an acronym, and then how do I do it? I'll run through the 4 steps real quick, give you an example from the ER where it was a pretty high stress situation, and then I'm going to end it up with an interview with retired Navy SEAL Command Master Chief Jason Gardner, who has an absolutely amazing example of the Ooda Loop. All right, this is my PowerPoint, so I get to put in a General Mattis quote. This is PowerPoint makes us stupid. If you don't know who General Mattis is, he is a very highly decorated Marine Corps general and former Secretary of Defense who is chock full of amazing statements like this, and I gotta respect the guy, right? So bottom line, why I put this in here is without action, knowledge is totally meaningless. PowerPoint, you can PowerPoint all day, but unless you get out there and take action and put it to work, it is pointless. So that's what I'm telling you, knife hand, is to get out and do this. All right, so what is the Ooda Loop? The Ooda Loop was developed by a military fighter pilot turned strategist named John Boyd. It's a tool that you can use once or even 100 times in any given scenario. And as I mentioned, is a framework that can walk you not only decision making, but also decision making as to why the heck am I so stressed. It can help you regain control of any situation, including those internal situations when you're stressing out. So notice the multiple arrows in here. As you go through one step, you may need to go back. The bottom line is you observe a situation, you orient to it, you decide what to do with all of those inputs coming at you, and then you act. Now again, we're applying this to that internal state of your mental mind when you're having stress. Okay, let's run through a drill. So it starts with observing a situation, right? This is a situation that is rapidly unfolding and something pops up that says, hey, this needs attention. This is called situational awareness. Think back to sometime recently, maybe was there something that really got you ticked off, something that just set you off. Maybe you suddenly felt like something just punched you in the gut and it was just like, oh my gosh, overwhelming. So again, this is a situational awareness. You're noticing your stress cues, but you just have to pop that now into notice your stress cues and now use the framework. You know, keep your head on a swivel at all times because your parasympathetic system is doing the same thing. You may as well figure out how to do it consciously. All right, so next step in the Ooda Loop is to orient. As Jocko Willink puts it, detach for clear thinking. Mentally step back and evaluate the situation. In orienting, what you're doing is you're taking in all the inputs of information, analyzing that data. And all of those little bits very specific to the situation, right? Because it's happening within you though, you have to have a lot of courage and a lot of humility to truly see it and to admit that to yourself. The situation in this case is what's happening in your mind and body. And as it's reacting to something in the environment, is it another person? Is it something that's totally out of your control? Just orient to that, detach, rise above it. With that, when you detach and rise above, you gain an elevated position over this thing to get a clear perspective on what is going on. And at this point, again, you're not judging it. You are just maintaining this position, positive control of it, not allowing it to escape you. You're just maintaining that control, looking down on it. And then again, you're looking down kind of like, ants on a hill. That's what you got to look at it as like, or clouds in the sky. Just like look at it, observe, this is doing that, that's doing that. And this is though looking within. Is my hands clenched? Is this happening? Is my mind racing? Am I going to those old neural pathways? And then recognize those physical cues. Are you gripping the steering wheel? Something like that. So the next step is to decide what your internal environment is. And then this is another area where you need a lot of clarity and a lot of that honesty. The honesty is throughout. You got to maintain that integrity to yourself. So what you want to do is get a read on where is this heading, but not only that, where did this come from? So you're kind of standing here in the middle. There's where you were going, but where did this come from? And this is where you are now. You got to trace it backwards, which is kind of tough to do sometimes, which is why you got to spend some extra time here. Ask yourself how you can take ownership of what is happening. Just really own up to the true emotions you're experiencing. You may want to shy away from this. You may want to just avoid it and not look at it, but you got to be honest here. What thoughts in your head led you here? What story are you telling yourself? Here's the hard part. Maybe it's your ego running the show. I'm guilty of that. Absolutely. I just think like, I don't deserve this. Who the heck do they think they are? What are they doing? No. That's just your ego talking, but you got to honestly take a look. What is it that is going on? Maybe you're making some excuses, blaming somebody else. Maybe it's something as simple as, you know what, I'm really pissed off because I'm late, and really that's my fault. Or maybe I am angry because I didn't eat. I was just running out the door and I forgot to eat my protein bar, and I'm just getting hangry. Maybe it's just that simple, but you have to really look at it. Sometimes it may be hard to truly acknowledge what is going on, especially early on. You're just very entrenched in the way that you used to be. So what in those neural pathways are just going and going, and it's tough to see them when they're that entrenched. So what you got to do is take a flanking position to those thoughts by not doing the thought, but by going into the body now. What is the body telling you? As I mentioned, the hands clenched. Do I have way too much muscle tension in my hands? Like, what does this mean when my hands are clenched? It means I'm preparing to fight, right? Or it means that I'm just bracing myself against something. Maybe what you need to do then is to just like, relax that ego, relax that grip on my anger, relax that grip on my muscle tension. Maybe I'm holding my breath. Maybe I just need to breathe, take a breath. Maybe it's just that simple. And if it feels like your stomach is in knots, just do what you can to focus on that. And if you can understand and put a name to whatever it is that's causing this, the minute that you name it, it just seems to vanish. Or you can kind of just accept it and acknowledge it. The minute that you see something, it becomes true and it rises to the surface, and you can then confront your enemy. So with this data that you're going through when you're deciding what to do next, you're troubleshooting all these options and strategies, and you're deciding on what course of action to do next. And basically the bottom line, what you want to do here is, what could do the most good right now? Do I need to just relax? How do I relax? What got me so ramped up in the first place? That's a really good place to go when you're here. But sometimes just developing that space to just pause and grow that space between responding and reacting. If you're doing that, fantastic. Next up, what do? You're still in your headspace. You figured out what the problem is. You gain that higher perspective. You've maybe flanked the problem by dropping into your body and figuring out where your tension is, or where your stress is really sitting. So what you do now is you decide on the problem, and what you got to do is act now. So you got to keep your purpose steady as you go through this action. If it's something that maybe this needs a pep talk, think of a couple phrases in your head. And if this is hard to do, say what someone who maybe gave you a good advice at one time, someone you look up to, what might they say to you? Is it something like strong work? Good job. It's all good. You're good. It's okay. It's all good. Whatever gets you motivated, whatever feels right. And sometimes you're at the end of your rope, and I'll admit that cuss words, totally fine. This is just within your headspace. If that's what your headspace sounds like, if your headspace sounds like an F-bomb all the time, great, fine. That's not wrong. I'm totally fine with that. And in fact, I do that myself sometimes when I'm at the end of my rope, especially when I'm doing like a workout, when I want to quit, when I'm telling myself I can't lift that much. And it's like, no, you can freaking do this, right? That's okay. This is you. There's no rules here. What works for you, what gets you motivated, what gets you to develop that space between responding and reacting, that's what we're looking for. Now, if you've decided you need to take action outside of this, like, go eat a protein bar, go take a nap, maybe just walk away from the situation, like someone's all up in your face and you're like, you know what? I'm just going to walk away. My ego is too much into this, and I'm just going to step back, and I'm going to walk away and not let my ego even rule the show here, because I got to bring my neocortex back online here. What you want to do then is, once that's all done, go back and see, do you need to do the Ooda loop again? As I said, it's a loop. Say you've gotten to this point and you're still not feeling it, just go back and do it again. Observe again, orient again, just do the whole thing again. It feeds back on itself. The more input, the more data that you gather, and you can take that data from the deciding and acting part and throw it right back in, so that you can continue doing this through any situation. And it's called the Ooda loop exactly for that reason. Okay, quick example from the ER. This is me, and I'm holding a cricothyroidotomy stylet thing that didn't work, by the way. So what happened is, it's 2 a.m. in the ER. I get a call from another ER. They're sending a patient who her airway, her esophagus had ruptured. Long story there, but bottom line, she's now getting air all in her skin, so she's puffing up, like puffy. She can't, and she's not even conscious at this point. She's not breathing. So she rolls in, and we prepared for this, so everybody just immediately runs into action. We know this Ooda loop. We're observing she's going to die if we don't do something. So we orient to that she's not breathing. We decide what treatments we need to do, and we act with calling respiratory therapy, getting more equipment. I know that I need to intubate. This is something we've trained for. I mean, at this point, the Ooda loop is just automatic. But here's where it starts to get more interesting. I'm trying to secure her airways, so I'm trying to put a tube in her throat. It's not working. She's so puffy, I can't see anything. And the nurses are all doing their job, but I'm sitting here thinking, like, plan A is not working. Okay, I call for something else. I do a plan B. Doesn't work. I try a plan C. That's not working. And the patient here is getting sicker and sicker. I've observed that the patient is in a critical position. I have oriented to that all of my techniques are failing, despite, I'm pulling out every card up my sleeve. They're all failing. But I can't really sit here and start wallowing in self-judgment or self-criticizing, like, man, plan A didn't work. Man, you're terrible. Like, you suck. Like, I can't wallow in that. I got to step back and just get above the situation. I have to detach for clear thinking. I do another quick internal Ooda loop, realize my emotions are starting to kind of play into here, and I'm like, oh gosh, I think I'm starting to have to go towards planned cricothyroidotomy. I have to decide, and I realize that we're in a situation of a failed airway. Everyone's looking at me, and I have to decide. So I have to take ownership of this whole thing, and I have to act. So I say, let's do the cric. My colleague tries this thing, it's a total dud. So now I know it's basically down to me. Oh yeah, by the way, the surgeon is nowhere to be found. I'd already paged the surgeon. It's 2 a.m. They're not getting there in enough time for this patient to survive. So I know that I have minutes to do my job. I do the cricothyroidotomy where I cut, and by the way, this is, again, she's puffed up, like pretty much this far. I had to cut extremely deep to get the job done, blindly. And if you've ever seen this on TV, trust me, you have not seen how I had to do it with that airway the way that it was. And what helped me also in this point, just a bonus tip, is visualization. I happen to know that certain pilots in the Navy, apparently I can't say who, but they use visualization before their flights to prepare for that high stress situation. So that's exactly what I had done at the same time. Happy to say that as I did that whole Ooda loop and I decided, I acted, things worked out. So that was good. Okay, so here's a way to do this at home. My example was in the ER, but for example, when I drove back home, I come into my garage and it is an absolute mess. So the minute I walk into my garage and I decide to clean up, it's freaking overwhelming. What I do is I observe that overwhelm. I orient to that hesitation to just shut the lights off and run away. And I decide I'm going to commit to the spring cleaning, and I'm going to act by breaking it down into smaller, more manageable and actionable steps. Another one would be I'm a borderline introvert extrovert. So walking into a party depends on my mood, but sometimes when it seems like everybody else knows each other and I'm brand new to the situation, my introvert side is like, yeah, let's not do this. Let's get out of here. Let's just go home and drink a beer on the couch. So what I have to do in that situation is observe and orient to that feeling, and then decide I think I'm going to try to be social. I came here, I'm going to try to have fun. And then I act by like taking a deep breath, walking into the party and saying, "Hi, I'm Leslie. I don't know anybody. Who are you?" And, sometimes you can meet some great friends that way, but you got to get over some emotional trigger like that. And another one is, I heard another one at work the other day, and I was like, yes, absolutely. When you're on the phone trying to get to a real person, observing that you are probably hitting level 11 in your stress level, and it's really pointless because you're just a machine on the other side of the line. But then what you can do is observe that, orient to like, this is really stupid that I'm getting angry about this. Decide, I'm just gonna take a breath, and maybe I'm so angry about this because I've been at it for hours, and I'm just gonna do this tomorrow. Or decide, I'm just gonna, delegate this to my husband, or I'm just gonna walk into the office tomorrow instead of try to do this on the phone. And then do an action, which will hopefully bring that stress level down. That helps quite a lot to reduce the stress. Jason Gardner, retired Navy SEAL Command Master Chief, is going to talk about using the Ooda Loop in a real life wartime situation. Trigger warning is that this is real. He gives wartime situations. Some of the details may be difficult to hear for people who are sensitive to hearing that. This is a real firefight that he's talking about. He's getting shot at. He has to respond. He has to react. He has to make decisions. And please watch or listen with caution. So welcome to this video. I got Jason Gardner here. He is a retired U.S. Navy SEAL who spent 3 decades in the SEAL teams with deployments across the globe, both Iraq, Afghanistan, 9 deployments, right? Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Spent some time as a frontline SEAL sniper, SEAL Team 5 Command Master Chief. You were a lead instructor at the Naval Special Warfare Group 1 Training Detachment, TRADET, and you've been the recipient of the Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars, Purple Heart, numerous other awards. Currently being a leadership instructor, speaker, strategic advisor at Echelon Front, and married to the beautiful Iris, and have 3 kids?
3 kids.
3 kids. All right. So, Jason, how are you?
Good morning, Leslie. I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, good morning. All right. So it's awesome. I am so happy to have you here. We're going to talk about Ooda Loop. So I came to the Ooda Loop through the military, and obviously you're very well acquainted with it. So I guess let's take it away. What do you know about the Ooda Loop?
It's Ooda Loop or Boyd cycle. And we've got observe, orient, decide, act, and it's continual process. And it's a decision-making tool that we use in the military, or that, a lot of people are doing it all the time, and you just don't realize that you're in this process. But once you do the process and it's really helpful for you to be able to take in information and process it and make just timely decisions and continuing through that. And I'm going to give an example of, like, in Afghanistan in my 2009 deployment, where the Taliban was actually able to get inside of our Ooda Loop, as we say it, and we were nearly overrun. So it was September of 2009, early September, maybe late August. And we were going into, my SEAL task unit was going in to capture a Taliban commander, and he was living in this village that was in the mountains north of Kandahar. So we came in via helicopter, moved over some terrain features, and our intelligence told us that he was inside of 2 compounds that were right on the edge of the village, near a piece of high ground. So we came in around 3 a.m, seized the 2 compounds, captured several military-age males, and a huge cache of weapons and explosives on that target. And we also, because we were going to remain there over day, we took a high ground position that was immediately adjacent to the compound. It was a small hill. It was a bald hill. There was no cover on it. And it was about the same elevation as, say, a 3-story building. Being the troop senior enlisted advisor, I happened to be positioned up on that high ground piece. And then When the sun came up in the village, all the women and children left, and that was the telltale sign that we were about to get in a huge firefight. So sun goes up, women and children all start leaving, and then we can see there's no shots yet, and the Taliban was really patient with us there in that they didn't attack us right away, but they waited. They figured out all the positions that we were holding and then started to take elevated positions around us. And that's the problem with fighting in the mountains is you take one piece of high ground and then you can't take it all, right? So they start pushing up to these high ground positions around us. And around 10 a.m., 10:30 in the morning, we can see a fighter pushing, and he's up on this rocky outcropping on a mountainside that's about 1,200 yards away from us. And we can see him pushing a PKM, which is a big belt-fed machine gun, out onto a flat piece of rock. So we start shooting at him with our sniper rifles. It's really windy. We're hitting very close to him, but not hitting him. And he's backing up into a cave or whatever he was in, and then he would push the machine gun back out again so they could eventually shoot at us. Now, what we didn't know was this was playing out in like 4 other positions completely surrounding where we were at the same time. And around 10:30 or 11, all those positions opened up on us with a massive barrage of rocket propelled grenades just came sailing in, and a steady stream of that PKM or machine gun fire. Now I'm flat out laying on my belly, and I've got a rock wall. It's about that far above my head, and there are bullets just stitching into the rock wall. Okay. I'm watching that rock wall erode under the bullet impact. Here's where they got into our Ooda Loop. All of us had to take cover up on the high ground position. Everyone was in the same boat that I was in that their heads were down. And below us in the compounds, they built fighting positions up on the roof. But because they were taking fire from elevated positions and, we didn't have full bunkers built, we just had walls, they had to bail out of those positions. So the Taliban completely cut off our ability to observe and orient because we couldn't look out. And I'll tell you what, a couple times I thought about putting my head up, and I would no sooner put my face into a running table saw than I'd put my head up and I'm like, nope, pull it right back down again. So other than the aircraft that we had overhead, which were severely limited in what they could see, because the couple of aircraft were both UAVs, so it was a Predator and a Reaper. They're looking at the battlefield through a thermal image, which is great until it's over 100 degrees out and the rocks are the same temperature as people, and the Taliban's also firing from covered positions. So they got close enough to the guys down in our compounds where they were able to start lobbing grenades over the walls. And what's coming behind that is that compound, they're getting overrun, and then we're right behind them. Luckily, our guys were able to fire out of windows in the compounds that we're at, and then they actually blew holes in the walls so they could see out to observe and orient and push the Taliban back a little bit so that they didn't get overrun. Now, in the meantime, we had a couple of manned aircraft come in and do some a show of force. So the first 2 jets that arrived were a couple of French Mirages, and we couldn't have given them a position to bomb at that point anyway, because everyone had their heads down. So our Joint Tactical Air Controller, he kind of made a smart call, or he did make a great call, and he just had those jets do a show of force over the 2 ridge lines that we were taking fire from. Now, what a show of force is that's when an aircraft will fly as low as that pilot is willing to fly, and basically lets the Taliban know, or whoever the enemy know, is like, hey, we have aircraft overhead, and they hate our aircraft because we drop bombs on them. So, these two French Marin pilots are like over the radio, oh, stand by, here we come. I mean, it was awesome. They were, like any air show you go to where the aircraft fly super low, they were lower than that. And the rumble of the aircraft going by, you could feel in your chest. And they sail by, and because they're flying low, they're kicking off these IR flares, which they use to distract in case the enemy has got any kind of heat-seeking ground-to-air missiles. So these flares are just shooting out as they're flying over. Okay, this now forces the Taliban to take a little bit of cover, and now we've interrupted their OODA loop because they can't observe us, and we can get up and start returning fire with our own weapons. And that evens the whole playing field out right now. And now the real problem is that we're in this position. We're miles behind enemy lines. We're completely surrounded. We could run out of ammo. Then a B-1 bomber checks on station. And B-1 bombers are awesome. They have bombs to waste. So our Joint Tactical Air Controller is in contact with the pilot, lets them know, what our situation is, and these two main ridge lines that we're going to take fire from. And the pilot says, and she says this in the most calm, cool voice. She's like, hey, I'm going to drop 4,000 pounds of ordnance for you. I'm going to give you 8 500-pound bombs, 4 on each ridge line. I'm going to airburst them 50 meters off the deck, and they're going to be spread out 100 meters apart. So the B-1 bomber can drop these all at the same time. And, she said it as cool and calmly as if she was saying, hey, I'm running down to the coffee shop. Do you want that latte that you normally get? So she does that. We get over the radio. We hear there's a weapons released, impact in 30 seconds. And then 30 seconds later, boom, 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 boom. There's 8 bombs explode simultaneously, 4 on each ridge line. And it lays down a frag pattern, which is all the, implements of those bombs thing that basically hits 6 football fields worth of terrain, and completely broke the back of the assault that was on us. And then we were able to hold our own for the rest of the day. But that is an example of being able to orient, decide, and then act, and then having things get inside that, your OODA loop. That's a war story for moving forward there. But obviously, we lived through it. We came back. It was a really, probably one of my closer calls. There have been a couple others in 5 combat deployments, but that was one of the big ones. That was one of the ones today where in the heat of the moment, I was looking at everything and putting it together and going, yeah, I am at a bare minimum, I'm going to get shot and probably going to not make it through this day. And yeah. So crazy stuff, but that's an example or phrase work of the OODA loop in real combat.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like actually a lot of different components of people. The Taliban, as you mentioned, had their own OODA loop, and then all the pilots that came in, each component has to come in and use the OODA loop in their own sphere. So they have to observe the situation, orient to what capabilities they have to apply to the situation, decide which one of those is the best thing to do. Can I drop bombs? Yeah, no, I have to orient to that. I have visualization. I don't, versus, oh no, I do have these capabilities, but do I know where the people are? And then act on that information. And then you get good outcomes from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that a lot of people, when they lay it out, they're like, well, okay, I'm kind of doing that every day. The key is just being introspective about it and being aware of some of the barriers that can kick you out of the loop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So sometimes you may forget, what kind of assets do I have in my disposal? Like, okay, we're pinned down. People might forget, like, oh, wait, JTAC's with us, like, let's contact them. So you can easily forget your assets until you're like, wait a minute, Orient, what do I have? What's around me? What capabilities do I have? And then decide, okay, do I need to call JTAC, or, do I need to stand down from that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's where it's something that it feels so innate when you've used it regularly in the military. And then, but what happens is it takes this battle and it puts this chaos, and it puts it into an organized way so that you can, just hammer away at the next step, the next step, the next step, in that haze of battle.
Sure. And what's crazy about the whole thing is tactically these applications are completely obvious on the battlefield, but then when you take them and you slide it over into personal life, I have no idea why I got to be 50 years old and in just the last couple years realized, okay, wait a minute, this actually applies to everything. This applies to losing my temper in traffic. This applies to being a better parent. This applies to being a better leader at work, and especially applies to being a better spouse, right? Um, Realizing what are those defended positions, realizing internally how I'm reacting to things and how that can carry me away, or I'm getting sucked into details that probably don't matter to the bigger picture.
Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned, like, applying it to traffic, that's something that you mentioned. Yeah. So how did you kind of first come to recognize, like, oh, I can use this when I have, like just run through that with me, kind of like the microsecond, just, unpack that.
So it was something that I started delving into after having, suffering from PTSD and having some traumatic brain injuries. That as I got treatment for those, I was introduced to the concept of mindfulness in conjunction with yoga. And at first, it was something that was really annoying to me, and I wasn't all that open to. And then later, I found that it was better than any drug that they were offering to me, or anything else. It's just being aware of of uh, of my own personal reactions. And it used to be that I would just completely freak out in traffic. If at a red light, if I was at a red light and, or coming to a red light and and it's yellow and the car in front of me stops and it's still yellow, I start white knuckling the steering wheel and I'm like, you got to be kidding me, And then as I learned to become more introspective and more aware of my own reactions, which before I just had blinders to. Like I wasn't even looking at how I was reacting to things. And so those first two, observe and orient, they weren't happening as far as my own emotions were concerned. In traffic. So just an example of now how I deal with traffic, or it's like, oh, okay, I'm stuck in heavy traffic. I'll notice that my heart rate has gone up. I'll notice that I'm white knuckling the steering wheel. I'm gripping it harder. And then I'll go say internally, my internal dialogue is like, you're stuck in traffic and you're getting angry. Is there anything you can do about this? No, there isn't. Then it follows on, well, then don't be angry about it because there's not a thing you can do to control it. And then I'll shift into some of the other techniques that you talk about in your workbook, where I'll talk about, think about, I'll maybe pace my breathing for a little bit. Or one thing is just, I'll give myself some perspective. It's like, hey, I'm in the car. I've got air conditioning. I'm comfortable. So it's good to go in those perspective pieces. And then I can pull myself out of the whole physiological response with the the cortisol production and all the other, negative things that come with being stressed out or angry. And so that's, and then as I back up further and look at the whole picture from a 30,000 foot view, I'm like, oh, okay, wait, this is Ooda Loop. This is exactly what we're doing on the battlefield. I'm just applying it internally to whatever struggle. Another classic one that happens is, I've got my daughter's 9, my daughter's 9, my son's 7, Storm and Thor. I have another boy, but he's grown up and he's in the Army now. But they'll be in the house and they'll be roughhousing and running around and hollering, and that starts to annoy me. And but then it's like, instead of yelling at them, hey, knock it off, which is not really setting a good example for them, I go through the internal dialogue. I'm aware that like I'm becoming annoyed. And I'm like, well, why am I becoming annoyed? Because the kids are running around and they're playing and they're laughing and hollering. Okay. It's such an amazing gift to have children that are, able to run around and play with each other. And then it's like, they're just being kids. I want them to roughhouse. That roughhousing is good for them. Now, it might get to the point where they're unsafe and they hurt one another, and then it's okay to step in and give them a correction, but I shouldn't have to yell. And I can't do it every time. I'll be honest with you. There's lots of times where I pop out of the loop. I'm not aware of my emotions. I get frustrated and I bark at them when it's not necessary. Now, is there times when you got to yell at your kids? Yeah. And those times look something like this. Get out of the road, right? If there's something that's immediate and safety's involved, then it's worthwhile raising your voice. But if they're just trying to calm down, or they're just being kids and you happen to be, I'm looking at my phone trying to read something and they're annoying me, that doesn't rate yelling at them. And it really shouldn't rate me raising my temper. Mm-hmm. Take it into work. There might be somebody at work who annoys me a little bit, or maybe my ego gets in the way. And then I have to be aware that that person is grinding me the wrong way, or that this situation has is just one where I'm working more out of emotion than logic, and then observe it, orient to it, decide that like, hey, here's the deal. I can't control what the input is. I can only control how I react. And then I start working through one of the processes to talk myself down from whatever, emotional response I've got that's not healthy. Mm-hmm. Emotions are good. I'm not saying not be emotional, but has anybody ever made a good decision when they're angry?
Right.
Yeah, I haven't. And so the workplace and parenting are not really good places to lose your temper. And the science is out there that you're cognitively impaired when you're angry. Now, if you're deadlifting, being angry is good because you're a little bit stronger, right?
That's a physical thing, though.
Trying to work through a complex situation, especially for a first responder or any kind of healthcare provider. Emotions are not going to help you think clearly. And so it's extremely important to being able to detach from them and being aware of the Ooda Loop and using it as a tool to be able to back up from your emotions. It's priceless.
Oh yeah. I mean, I fully, that same quote, never make a decision when you're angry, or never make an emotional decision. That is huge in our house, actually. Because you just, that rational brain, it's gone. And you start to kind of devolve into this more basic self where you're just reacting, not acting. So you're unable to fully process a situation and honestly be effective in your job, effective in your role, because you're no longer thinking with what you've all been trained to do. So, in my job as an ER doctor, if something comes in a life-threatening situation. And if I were to not use my rational thought, literally lives are lost. And the same thing with you on the battlefield. Now that is, that takes a lot of training to do. And, you don't want to start, fighting the battle when you're getting bullets shot at you. You need to train with this at home, kind of, work through this on the small scale, so that when the big thing hits you, you are ready to face it with the tools equipped with the Ooda Loop, because you've gone through it before. You've practiced it on, at home when I found a dirty dish and I'm like, God damn it, and we've talked about this, put it in the dishwasher,
Yep.
But, then I go through like, wait a minute, I am a little overly upset about this plate. Okay, so I'm, observing that. And then I orient to like, okay, well, that's okay. I recognized it. I'm not judging myself. Okay, I didn't do anything yet. I observed it. Now I'm orienting to it. Why is that? Okay, maybe I didn't get enough sleep. I just got home from work and, I'm coming home to a dirty sink. Okay. And then I get to just look inward and figure out like, I'm really tense right now. Maybe if I just like relax. Okay. That kind of makes it feel better. Just that physical response to the emotional response. If you calm down the physical, just like, okay, I can relax. Okay, it's just a plate. I can put it in the dishwasher and then done. The action that I took was not a reaction, but it was a thought out process to put a dish in the dishwasher.
Yeah. And then the repetition of all those little drills on the smaller things are really going to help you to be able to deal with the bigger things. Period.
Yeah. So it's not like you have to like sit down and set 5 minutes out of your day just to practice it. Although, that works too, but it's, it's just like in those little moments, just, that orientation or that observing, having that continual situational awareness of the self, just the same way you would going out, on patrol.
Absolutely. And the more I think about it, the more I'm just flabbergasted it didn't occur to me to take this stuff and apply it to every aspect a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue there was I've just been reactive for years and years and years. And so it takes a little bit to undo all that habit that I've formed in the background and make new habits, but it's not impossible. It's completely doable.
Yeah. And I think part of the changing is recognizing that humility of, maybe I could have done things better, but tomorrow's a new day. I'm going to start right now, and sometimes it's kind of hard to look at yourself in the mirror after you recognize that. I mean, at least for me, that's how I felt, of just like, damn it, why did I freak out so much about things that, I'm trained not to freak out and I've done this. Why don't I do this with the people I love the most, or the people that I'm leading at work, so that I'm most effective in my role as a person.
And it's very difficult to judge yourself and not hold yourself in contempt. It's an art form. And you have to look at, hey, I'm not a bad person, but these are things that I can improve. And you spoke about humility. I think humility is one of the most important attributes of any leader or any person, because and don't confuse humility with meekness. What to me, a good definition of humility is like, I can always do better. And so you're constantly reassessing how you're doing things and how you can do them better and how you can improve. And that'll keep you moving on the right track.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I actually, I had an argument at work the other day. It was the end of a long day. I'm talking to a consultant, things out of my control. He starts losing it on me, and just losing it. And it's like, look, there's a pandemic going on. We're all stressed out. You don't have to lose it on me, man. Like, serious. But, normally previously when someone would kind of full frontal attack me like that, I'd be like, oh, bring it on. Oh, you want to do this? I will rise to the occasion. And I feel like this training, for me, I realized, and I only realized it afterwards, but I took a flanking maneuver on him. I did not do that full frontal assault, but I kind of oriented, recognized I'm getting really pissed off right here. Me
Mm-hmm.
using that anger right now in this situation at work, not gonna really, we're gonna end up slamming the phone, hanging up on each other, and nothing's gonna get resolved. So I recognized a new humility in that, and I basically just said nothing. And then he then wore himself out and realized how much he was yelling, and I didn't even have to ask for an apology. He just said, "Hey, oh, you know what? I'm sorry."
Mm-hmm.
And then we were able to have a rational discussion. I think, he lost his cool. He lost that rational thought. I think by me giving into some humility, and I admitted it was tough to battle with that meekness that you described. It was really tough because I'm like, am I letting him walk all over me right now? By not meeting him right into that challenge. And I realized after the fact, like, you know what? I still accomplished everything that I needed to for that patient. I didn't hang up on him. I didn't start calling him names. I was able to be a better doctor and be a better take care of my patients because I was humble but not meek. We're able to come to a mutual, amicable conclusion. I got an apology out of it without even asking for one. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I kind of hung up from that discussion. I was like, oh, okay, that might have worked.
Yeah, and the tactical aspect of it, that's a 50 caliber position that's bunkered in shooting at you, and you don't want to frontal assault it, but your ego tells you to just start sending it back, and it doesn't work. The flanking maneuver, remaining calm, stepping back. One thing that I have tried to use, I don't use it every time, but to realize that it takes greater strength to come back at somebody who's being unkind or unpolite or just not good, to reply with kindness, and to return a frown with a smile takes greater strength. And then that turns off that little piece of my ego that's saying, that wants to bow up and throw back, insults and yell too at the other person, which just, it never works.
Mm-hmm.
Never works. That the route that you took is going to get a good solution every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes practice though.
It Yes. Yeah. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not perfect at it. I'm working towards it, and it does take a lot of practice. It has to be something that you're at least aware of and is constantly going on inside your internal dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's see. We kind of work through all that.
I think, I mean, I'll just go through it and highlight it again.
Okay, sure.
In any situation, I'm observing. I have to be, the key is to be introspective, to realize what those red flags are, that you have gotten sucked into details, or that mainly you've become too emotional, you're too stressed out or too angry about something, and go, okay, these are my red flags. I can feel my face flushing out, or I realize that I've stopped listening to the person I'm talking to, and I'm just thinking of what I'm going to say back to them. Boom. Those are your indicators. Those are your observe. Then you're going to orient towards it and realize, okay, now I have become angry, or this is what is going on. And then you're going to decide that, can I really, is being angry or being stressed out help the situation at all? And then you're going to act through either some internal dialogue, or doing like active listening techniques and not responding with anger back to someone else. And then, you've got a lot of great drills in the workbook on different ways for this act portion of it, that people can go through as they're trying to back up from the anger or back up from the emotion, and detach from all that, and take a good look around, and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then keep the cycle going.
Yep. Yep. It's all about just seeing it clearly and seeing yourself clearly, seeing the situation and also the internal situation with your thoughts so that you're able to be your best self.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, I find that labeling the stuff, and this is right around disorient areas, like I'm angry, or I'm feeling jealous, or I'm feeling offended. Those things, once you label them, it really helps to unstick that from the gooey mire that's in your brain and separate yourself from it. Because
Yeah.
then you can say, is something that I can control? Is this worth getting angry over? Is this the big picture? Hey, yeah, I'm in traffic, but I've got air conditioning in my car. I can listen to music and do whatever. So it's all good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And if you're not used to being in touch with your emotions, it's a good way to, that's definitely good. So you can start to recognize like, oh man, when I'm doing this, what am I doing? When I'm like, thinking about,
Yeah.
uh, how much I just spent cleaning, that's really me oriented. And what does that say about me? Am I being judgmental? Am I being narcissistic?
Mhm.
Am I being defensive? So doing that practice makes it for if you're not used to being like how I feel, it's definitely good practice so that you're aware. Because a lot of people want to label everything as anger, which I get. It's very easy to label everything as anger. But when you see it clearly, you can usually piece out like, nah, it's not really anger, is it? It's actually, I'm a little jealous. Maybe it's more jealousy, that I didn't get the recognition I
Mhm.
felt I deserved or something like that.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, especially in work environments where you're in a supporting role and someone else seems to be getting the credit, but your part in that whole role is critical, and you can get that resentment building up. And that's poisonous as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. This is all great stuff. So, all right. So, yep. Then again, in the worksheet, kind of working through all this stuff, and then just kind of once you do this, it's good to reinforce. Like, wait a minute, this is actually working for me. So just kind of writing down if you recognize it, even the small things. Laundry around the house. Someone at work did a little extra for you, and things like that. Just recognizing not only bad emotions but the good emotions too, so that you can even appreciate the good emotions. So like if you suddenly get your daughter suddenly runs up to you and hands you a picture they drew and it says I love you, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's something you want to treasure. So you can observe like, oh my gosh, that really got me right in the feels. And then you can observe that and orient to it and then decide, I am going to treasure this moment. This is a moment that I will never have again. What am I going to do here? I am going to look my daughter in the eye and tell her I love her with every cell of my being. So you can use it for bad. You can use it for good. It's a tool to use just for clarity and to know yourself.
And I know that a lot of SEALs, and I suspect it's a deal with healthcare providers and first responders as well, that it's a lot of times it's really difficult to be present in the moment, and because your brain is constantly ricocheting around and thinking of other things, and then you miss those. You're not present in the moment, enjoying the special quiet times that you have with your family, or loud times if your kids are yelling, but actually enjoying how lucky you are to have them.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So, yep, that's Uda. Do you have any parting shots on the Ooda Loop?
Oh, the parting shots would just be I personal thanks for all the um, healthcare workers and first responders, because they're truly on the front lines. I mean, the military, we go overseas and then we come back and we train. Those of you in the healthcare field, you're out there every day, and there's no separation between you and your battlefield is real, and that line you're holding is one of the most important lines for the safety of all of us in the United States, or in the world, really, wherever we live. And so You know, how often do they have parades for healthcare workers? They don't, and they ought to.
Yeah.
And first responders the same. Well, first responders you get in parades sometimes, and there's a lot of thanks, but I think there needs to be a lot more. And I really appreciate the job that everyone's doing to help keep us safe and healthy.
Oh, thanks. I'm still getting used to the attention. It's
Yeah.
something that, yeah, I'm still not, it's very much appreciated, but I'm not used to hearing it, So, yeah. All right. So thanks again to Jason Gardner for that awesome interview. So just to wrap up, what we went through in this lesson, the Ooda Loop is, what is it? It's an acronym for a strategy, and how to do it, examples, and an interview. So bottom line, Ooda Loop is an acronym that will help you develop presence of mind under the most demanding of circumstances. And with this tool, you will have the ability to stabilize any situation through focus and personal presence. Make sure you do the worksheets in the workbook. And the happiness bonus is a concept called Kaizen. This is a Japanese concept of continuous improvement. This was made popular by the Toyota company when they were trying to gradually and consistently always improve their efficiency on the assembly line of I think it was their cars. And those small changes add up over time to increase productivity and increased improvements for the business as a whole. What we can do with Kaizen is apply this to our lives. Make small incremental improvements that build up on their own and don't feel like much, but over time they add up. So what I would advise is to look around your space and make a mental note, or just list off 10 things that you can do right now in the next 10 minutes or 15 minutes that make you just happier and bring some positivity into your space. So some examples would be, if you have any visual noise going around, like some papers that are up that you don't need up anymore, like old yellowed memos, that you maybe just retype them, make them look better. Maybe you have some wires, that have always bothered you. You never did anything about it, but now you can just like dust them off and make them more streamlined so it just looks nicer and doesn't bother you. Maybe you can take an air can to your dusty keyboard, throw out pens that don't work anymore, and check that your chair is as ergonomic as possible. Just think for a minute, am I sitting like this with my shoulders up, or am I kind of typing like this? So just take a moment. Are you doing that with your workspace? So look around, take a fresh eye to your whole space, and think of what you could do to make it better. So that's things to take away, things to maybe add to your space. Are there any pictures in your wallet that you want to put on the wall? Is there something a good spot you can think of, just look around. Is there a spot where I could put a picture of my pet? Or maybe some affirmation, some kind of mantra that means something to me, maybe a verse of something that means something to you. So basically take away the noise and infuse some positivity. All right, so that's it, Kaizen and the Ooda Loop. Any questions, shoot them my way, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Download the course materials at stressreleasesurvivalguide.com.